Hello YouTube. Today I would like to talk about the two opposite types of thought that go on in the human brain. On the one hand, memory, on the other hand, imagination. Now these two are total opposites. But how do we define them? Memory is when you're thinking about something that has happened. Imagination is when you think of something that hasn't happened. Something you haven't seen or heard or smelt or tasted or touched. Something that hasn't occurred to you physically. Now, we're quite familiar with people who have no memory. Things like amnesia, Alzheimer's, dementia. A lot of us have old relatives. We know how terrible it is to lose your memory. Everyone can think of that. But people without imagination are not so well known. And people misunderstand what imagination is. Now, I'm going to tell you a story. As you know, I have autism. I have some imagination, but not as much as normal people. Now, when I was about 10, that would be in year 5 at school, my teacher told us all to draw a plan of a shopping centre and to choose which shops to put in it. Now, obviously, this was meant to be an imaginative exercise. You were supposed to imagine the shops. I couldn't. I didn't realise I couldn't. As far as I'm concerned, I did it fine, but certainly not by my teacher's standards. What I did, I thought of this wonderful shop that I loved called the Tartan Cupboard, which was everything Scottish. And I loved that idea, so I drew that in. And I thought, oh, well, we better have a Welsh shop next to it, an Irish shop, French, Finnish, Estonian, Swedish, and before you know it, I'd drawn about 60 shops, all specialising in a country's products. So, I wasn't using my imagination, I was using my memory for the shop I'd been to and for all the countries I knew. That wasn't what I was meant to do. I was meant to think of the baker's shop, the butcher's, candlestick makers, whatever. Now, some of the myths about imagination. People think you need an imagination to dream. You don't. People without imagination can have dreams, but they are just flashbacks. There won't be anything different. Some of the scenes may be chopped and changed, but they'll still be exact copies of what happened, based in that person's memory. And you'll find people without imagination often have fantastic memories, because that bit of the brain isn't being used, so it gets used for processing memory instead. Okay? Another myth is that you can't write stories unless you have an imagination. Once again, if you have a good enough memory, you can memorize dozens of pictures and names and characters and chop and change them to make your own story. I wrote a novella when I was about 16, but there was nothing random about it. It was all based on things I'd read. None of it was entirely made up. I was just using my memory, and none of the names of the characters were random, because I couldn't make up names. What I did, they would be the names of a country spelt backwards, or one of them I called Diabla because that comes from the Greek word for devil. So I was using my memory for etymology, and I have enough imagination to rearrange letters around, but that was it. Another myth is that people without imagination can't do art. Nonsense. In fact, some of the greatest artists in the world have no imagination. What these people do, they draw exactly what they see, no more, no less. So, they're very clever, they've got fantastic memories and fantastic coordination, but there's no imagination being used. The same happens with very severe autistics. You give them a pen, ask them to do a drawing, they just scribble. Once again, no imagination being used. Doesn't mean it's worthless, they're still learning to coordinate, and hopefully their imagination will develop. Stephen Wilkes is the most famous art savant. Now, he does have some imagination. Originally, he didn't. Originally he just drew what he saw, but now he's learned to not exactly copy, to make little changes. And that is a huge leap for him. Good for him, actually. And now, a surprising effect of having no imagination is with respect to fiction. Now, you would expect people without imagination to all be atheists and to reject fiction. I was like this during my teenage period. I'm not anymore. I do enjoy fantasy, but I don't believe in any of it. That's the key. You do get people who have no imagination who won't read fiction, but the exact opposite can happen. Some people without imagination believe everything they read. They believe in aliens or fantasy creatures or people who are dead still being alive. This is because they don't understand what fiction is. They do not understand the point of fiction. They do not understand the point of writing things that are lies. So the only thing you can do with people like that, people who believe everything they can read, just give them fact books and make sure it's like a book of interesting facts. Facts which will excite them in the same way that a story about aliens or minotaurs or whatever excites them. Because there are real things out there which are more interesting than fiction. And certainly keep them away from religion. Well, I'd say that to any children, to be honest. What you really need imagination for, it's not for drawing, for writing, or for dreaming. What you need imagination for is talking. I work with people with various levels of imagination, and you can always tell the ones who have the least imagination because they have the most repetitive speech, they're the most frightened of change, they're less likely to do things on their own. And that is where imagination is crippling. It doesn't cripple your creative energies, it cripples your independence. Without imagination, there is no independence. Without imagination, you are prompt dependent. So how do you cope with people like this? If they stop in the middle of something and stare at you, looking for a prompt, don't be maternal. Please, being maternal is the worst thing you can do. Just shrug and say, well, come on, do it yourself. Might take a while, but that's the only way. If you bring them up in a motherly fashion, treat them like idiots, do everything for them, they will be crippled for life. And when they move to a new situation where not everyone is waiting on them hand and foot, they'll be frightened. They won't understand it because they've got no imagination. Other things you can do to help people without imagination, most likely you'll be familiar with this: timetables, having conversations at the same time each day, having meals at the same time each day. That can help. That can help. But we do need more familiarity about this. We are so familiar with people without memories that we forget about the other half of it, those without imagination, and their problems can be even worse than those without memory. Both of them, incidentally, can be helped by videoing what's happened throughout the day. Now, video cameras, you can get these on mobile phones now. They're much cheaper than they ever were. If you just video certain events through the day, this can help people with Alzheimer's and autism, people without memory and people without imagination, because it helps fill things in. Helps fill in the blanks left by no memory, and it helps fill in the structure that you need for someone with no imagination. Okay? Thanks, YouTube. See you later. Bye.